Hey there, sweet peas. Welcome back to Friendless. I'm your host, James Avramenko, back once again with a brand new episode with very special returning guest, Shanda Stefanson. Shanda and I celebrate her brand new ADHD diagnosis. We discuss shifting our careers away from poetry, and we talk about the struggles of making friends later in life. All that and so much more. It was such a treat catching up with Shanda, and I know you're going to love this episode. So for now, lean back, get comfy, set your volume at a reasonable level, and enjoy my interview with the one and only Shanda Stefanson here on Friendless. So this week on Friendless, I have the return of a former guest of the show and a dear friend of mine from back in Saskatoon, the one, the only Shanda Stefanson. How are you today? It has been forever.
I'm good. Yeah, it has been forever. How are you, James?
I'm good. I got like a funny I got a little bit of a late start today. I there's these funny things going on in my apartment that I cannot for the life of me get to the bottom of. My like late at night my bed like just like vibrates constantly. And I can't tell if it's like someone doing like laundry late at night or if it's like someone has like a massage chair or something like that, because it's just this like constant vibration, and sometimes it goes on for hours. And my like landlord has gone to other suites and like asked around, and nobody feels it and nobody knows what they're talking about, like it, and so it's just this mystery.
It's ghosts.
That's what I said. I was like, uh-oh, ruh-roh, you know. But yeah, no, so I was like, I was up like late, like knocking on walls and trying to get people to shut the fuck up, and no one was. So
Oh, jeez.
so Shanda, as I mentioned, you have been a previous guest, but for anyone who may not be familiar with you, I always love starting interviews with a very blunt question of, who the hell are you?
Oh gosh, that's like the quintessential question. Short answer, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, when we first met and became friends, I was really involved in like the spoken word and poetry community and theater and stuff like that, but I don't know, a lot has changed. The world has changed, my life has changed, your life has changed, and
Mm.
I don't know. These days I like work and stay home and like adore my cat and like hang out with my husband who's also been on your podcast, and
Mhm.
I don't know. Who am I? I don't know.
I love this is like since introducing this question, it's become one of my favorite like segments of the show because it can spark so much like existential angst, but it also is like really beautiful. I It's something that I really love about the question, about all these questions, is like I love seeing where the impulse of the question takes the questionee,
Mm,
and I never want to cause pain. I never want to cause, but it's like it's almost interesting to think about how close to the surface the uncertainty of these things are,
mm.
and yet we all, I think, collectively like just try to like kind of ignore it,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, what is that? What did yeah, I don't know. It's actually something that's been like kind of forefront uh, randomly that we're talking about it now, but it's something I've been questioning a lot lately because about 3 months ago I got diagnosed with ADHD.
Mm. Congratulations.
Yeah, and it's like so my whole personality was just a lack of dopamine. Like so I'm not quirky, I'm just like need to be medicated. Like so and this question of like are we just a collection of our like hormones and like
Mm.
electric impulses in our brain? Like yeah. So yeah, it's been something that I'm not struggling with, but it's been on my mind. Like, what does this mean for like who I am? What does it mean for my
Mhm.
future? What does it mean for like retroactively? looking at all the
Mm.
choices or like non-choices that I made in my life, and like, yeah.
How has that been feeling for you? I know for me, when I was diagnosed a couple years ago, there ended up being, there was this sort of like initial real peak of excitement because I was like, "Oh, that okay, I see myself a little better now." And then there was this really sudden drop of like mourning, and
Mhm.
sadness about like realizing how much I'd been struggling without even knowing it, and how much I felt I'd lost out on, and all those paths and all those lives that I was like punishing myself for not living or leading, but also recognizing like that was never going to be possible. And
Mhm.
so having to really reconcile all that stuff, and it's ongoing for me, but how has that been landing for you lately?
Yeah, kind of the same. It was like I actually started down the path of trying to get a diagnosis because my niece was diagnosed a couple years ago. She's 19. And just like hearing her talk about it, I was like, that's me.
Mm,
Like,
mm,
and especially for women and girls, it's
mhm.
so different than like the uninformed person believes what ADHD is. It doesn't present
Exactly.
like that at all, especially in girls and women. And so just I did all this research into it and watched all the YouTubers and was just like it makes so much sense.
Mm,
And kind of that same thing, like if somebody had figured this out like 20 years ago, like where would my life have gone? And it was um interesting too because I was in high school, I was like a real go-getter.
mhm,
I did everything, I had good grades, all of the things. And then in tail end of my second year of university, my sister passed away.
mm,
And it was like this sharp change where I couldn't get myself to do anything. I would stay up until
mm,
4 in the morning watching Law and Order reruns and like drag my ass to class and like sleep through half my classes. And like
mm,
it's like it's like the trauma and the grief and all of that just kind of like flipped a switch on
mhm.
to like on, and I just got, I was coping, and then it was just like I wasn't.
Yes.
And then now I'm in my 40s and like perimenopause and like the pandemic and the stress and like it same kind of thing. I just was like shut down. I am not coping with anything.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was very much like, yeah, I was excited to finally have an answer for why, like, I'm not just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm not just bad at adulting, bad
Yep,
at humaning.
yep.
There's like something legitimately physically wrong with my brain. But
Mm,
then, yeah, this, like you said, like a mourning, like this
mhm.
deep sadness for like what could have been.
Yeah.
And like one of my therapists that I've seen over the years was, whenever I would get into these like what could have been, she's like, you're just gonna like what if yourself to death,
Yes.
like
That's what
what
my
if,
therapist always says, yeah.
yeah, like what if you had bought a winning lottery ticket 7 years ago? Like there's a million what ifs, right?
Mhm.
So I'm trying to just really focus on like what it means for my future, and
Yes.
what this knowledge, and I'm seeing a like an ADHD counselor and like
Mm.
on medication, and I'm doing a lot better. Like I feel like
Nice.
I'm thriving in a way that I haven't in a really long time. So it's exciting, but also just like how the fuck did nobody catch this?
Yeah, yeah. I wanna flag something, and this isn't meant as like a, but, I hear this in myself all the time, and when I hear other people say it aloud too, it really catches my ear, is framing it in ourselves as our brains are wrong or our brains are broken, right?
Mm,
There's something wrong with my brain, and there isn't. It's just
it's
how your
just
brain is,
different. Yeah.
right? Yeah. As far as I'm concerned too, the more I research and the more I learn about it, the more I recognize that if we're going to frame it as good or bad, which I try my best to not in any case, but if we're going to, I would actually much prefer, sort of I use the blankets of, like, allistic and autistic, even though, like, autism and ADHD are more just comorbidities, they're not exactly one to one, but, like, for simplicity, I usually use those framings, you know, and I would substantially prefer an autistic brain over an allistic brain, you know, because, just because a brain can function within a society or a system like capitalism doesn't make it good. In fact, that makes it a very scary brain, you know.
Mm,
And I think something like an autistic brain, which is designed, if you really look at it, for a type of state that the natural human seems to be more built for, you know, a little bit more hunter gatherer, a little more like, the ability to multitask and the ability to be aware of things that others wouldn't be, you know, that's really good for the group, right? And
mhm.
so it's actually, I think it's a really beautiful brain formation, and I just recognize that it makes surviving in this system so much harder, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I always try to just flame it as like, you're not broken. There's nothing to fix. You know, there's nothing to fix.
Yeah,
We also do play within a system and a set of rules that makes our lives substantially harder, you know,
yeah.
and so we get to decide, like you say, about our future, you know, so we could decide, like, so how do we cope, and how much of the game do we buy into, you know, for our survival, and how much of it do we say, yeah, fuck all that noise, you know.
Yeah. I know, like, I was like, I've been a square peg trying to fit myself into a round hole my whole life, and
Yes.
it's like, just be a square peg.
Bingo.
Like,
Bingo.
find a square hole, you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's been, like, freeing and, yeah, in ways that, like, yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
It's only been, like, 3 months, and it's been a quick sorta, like, hyper focus was my new hyper focus kinda thing.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like things make so much sense now, like
Mhm.
all the ways my life has shaped up kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Well, and the creativity, you know, and I think, and that's another element that it's like, I know I wouldn't be as creative as I am without my autistic brain, you know?
mhm,
And so I really cherish that because I cherish my creativity, you know?
yeah,
And so it's like, yeah, okay, I can't hold down a office job. I can't do it. But like, who gives a fuck? No one should.
mhm,
No one should be able
mhm.
to do that, you know? Like
Yeah, it's funny because I was like I work in healthcare and there's an occupational therapist that I don't work in the office anymore, but when I was, and I was going through this journey and I was talking with her a lot about it. And she's like, "So do you find that your symptoms are like interfering with like your work and your daily life?" And I was like, "Well, at work, I cope pretty well. I'm pretty good at like masking, I guess. And I mean, I have sort of like a constant low grade panic attack all
yeah.
day,
Yeah, and then you come
but
home
but
and you're a
I'm
puddle.
but I'm like functioning pretty well." And she's like, that doesn't sound like functioning well."
Yeah.
Like,
No.
I was
No.
like, "Oh yeah."
Mhm.
I'm just
Mhm.
so used to it that it feels normal. So,
Yes. The idea of, like, yeah, that low grade anxiety always being present, like, that's not what being alive is, you know? Being
yeah,
alive
who
isn't
knew?
being afraid.
I know.
Mind blowing.
Yeah.
Speaking on the creativity end, you know, you're someone who is a beautiful poet and has done so much work within the art community. And, you know, I know that there was so much, like, I think even before the pandemic, things were already kind of shifting away, and I know a lot of, like, when I showed up in Saskatoon, the scene was already sort of like just not like completely breaking up, but it was shifting and it was changing, and who had been a part of it was sort of moving out, and there was a new wave of people who I don't think either of us had. And forgive me, I'm not meaning to speak for you, but like, I got the impression neither of us had much interest in participating in the new scene, you know,
Mhm.
and and I'm curious, in the you know, the following years, have you been maintaining any kind of personal practice, or have you been working on anything outside, or how has that been going for you?
No, it hasn't been going at all.
Oh no! Oh no!
No. Yeah, I know. The pandemic really fucked me. Like
Yeah.
I was not okay. And I feel like for like 3 years I was just in like survival mode.
Yeah.
And it was like do what you need to do to get through the day. And work was so stressful, and then, all this other ADHD and everything on top of it. And like working in healthcare, and
Mhm.
so yeah, I just was like survival mode. And I've
Yeah.
both Steven and I have had a really hard time just like getting back into like thriving mode, like doing
Mhm.
the things that we enjoy. And um yeah, the other day I was like, didn't we used to do things? Like, what did we do? Because like now
I've
it's like,
had
what do you
this
want to
exact
do
question.
today?
I love
We go
this.
shopping because for so long that's all you could do.
That's right. It was the only thing open, so you just go to the
Yeah.
mall. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, I'm sure we did things. Like, this wasn't our life before. So yeah, I feel like Steve and I are both really on the cusp of like we really want to like examine our life and decide like what's important to us and what we want, instead of just kind of like coasting. We want to like invest in, I don't know, invest in our lives, invest in our relationship ourselves, and
Yeah.
yeah, and
Uh,
figure out how to not just survive anymore.
yeah. Well, and it's also that thing, coming back to something we just talked about is that it's like, something I work on with my therapist all the time in undoing those like shame spirals and in breaking those loops is recognizing that like to be able to feel anxiety means you're alive, and to be alive means that you have some sort of future,
Mhm.
the future's only done when you're dead, and at that point it won't matter.
It's true.
So it's like there can be some very very quick like existential dread behind that, but because of the nature of our brains, like you said about you're able to see worst case scenarios really fast, and that's a product of the ADHD brain, is to
Mm.
be able to see connections and then jump to conclusions and synthesis really fast, and so you hear one thing and you hear point A and your brain can jump to point G in an instant, and for me it's about processing back to like, okay, we're only going to get ourselves to point B and that's it. And that's all we're going to worry about right now because that's the only step we have. Everything else is
Mhm.
just theoretical, and recognizing that there are so many societal myths around when you can be successful and when you can start living and when you have to stop living and when you have to give up a dream and when you can no longer have that dream, and I often frame that around art, because there's all the myths of if you haven't made it before whatever age you'll never make it, and my question right now for myself has been, and maybe I'll even kind of open this up to you to answer if you're comfortable with it, is like what even is making it, like what's success? Is it I wrote a song, or is it I got to play a song in a stadium,
Mhm.
like what is success to the creative impulse?
Yeah. Well, and that's something that like coming from like slam,
Hmm.
doing poetry slams, and like having a constant like, oh, if I write this new poem I'm going to perform it or and get scored on it. And
Hmm.
like it did such fucked up things to my like creative practice.
Yes.
It's almost like I would never want to have a job as a creative person, just because trying like making something you're living just changes your relationship to it so much.
Yes.
But then it's also like, and maybe it's ADHD, but I only work to deadline.
Mhm.
I don't just do things, well, certain things like playing video games for 5 hours a day, but
Fuck
like
yes. Fuck yes.
you know, I need, it's the like I have to have a place for it to go almost. Like
Hmm.
I find it so hard to just like I'm going to write this and then like nobody will ever see it or read it. Like
Hmm.
so I've talked with my therapist a lot about this too, where
Yeah.
it's just like what, like can't you just do it just cuz if like it helps you, or it
Yes.
it feels nice, or does it matter if no one's ever going to see it? And yeah, like what is I don't care about like success, you know? I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be rich. I just want to like a happy, comfortable life,
Mhm.
which that's it's a whole nother thing. Like putting pressure on yourself to be happy is a whole other
Oh,
discussion. But
big time, big time. Yes.
like yeah.
God, though.
But yeah, I don't know. I still have creative impulses, and there's definitely something lacking in my life when I'm not
Mhm.
doing, and it's been so many different things over my life. Like I would play guitar and write songs, or then I did poetry and playwriting, and I did like collage art and like
Mhm.
sewing and cross stitch and
Yeah.
and I only recently figured out I had ADHD. But the signs are all there. But anyway, but just to have something cooking,
Yeah,
anything, just some kind of way to like take the things inside of me and put them outside of me.
that's right.
And my mental, spiritual, whatever health has definitely suffered from not doing that.
Mhm. Well, it's something I've talked about many times on the show. I'm sure we even have just talked about it in private, is that, like, um, to sound like the broken record that I am, like, I think capitalism has fundamentally murdered the spirit of art because,
Mm,
art to me, I mean, there's many, art is obviously one of those nebulous terms, and it's many, many, many things. But to me and my creative and artistic practice, it's catharsis for me. It's getting experiences, thoughts, impulses out of my body and onto something else out of
mhm,
me. And it's rarely been, I still harbor deep, like, very, very traumatized framings of, like, wanting to be a cool kid, wanting to be a part of the cool kid group, wanting to be validated, wanting to be seen, and accepted. And when I was young, I tied that up with art, right? And I
mhm.
tied up, if this poem goes well, or if I perform this monologue, or if I sing this song, whatever, then I'll be loved, and I'm really working to tangle those sentiments, but that's gonna take years, and it'll still, like, even as I try to unpack it, there's still these little lingerings, like, yeah, but what if, right? you know and I think for me, like, it's becoming now of, like, just getting back to the, like, I always kind of, like, roll my eyes when people are like, going to the gym is my therapy, or, like, writing poetry is my therapy, and I'm like, no, my therapy is my therapy,
Mm,
but part of my therapeutic practice is writing poetry,
mhm.
or painting is part of my practice, and I think I'm not trying to say go do this. I guess I'm just this is the again another ADHD impulse is, like, hearing a thing, and so I'm telling a story about myself because that relates to it,
Yes.
is like, for me, is coming back to the, like, I'm gonna do this because it makes me feel better when it's done. Um, and also on the other side too, like, the idea of, like, a deadline, or the idea of meaning in general is arbitrary and uh, fiction, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, just make up a deadline, right? Because it's all made up,
Doesn't work that way though. If it's like a self-imposed made-up deadline, somehow it just doesn't have the same effect. But
Does it
anyway.
feel good? I'm not meaning to spin into, like, let's coach you or anything, but,
Mm,
like, does it help if you, like, tell someone what the deadline is and then make them kind of come into it? Because that's helped me in the past.
maybe I could try that.
I don't know. I don't mean to suddenly you didn't ask for advice, and I'm not meaning to give it, but, on that end, I think that spins to one of the sort of, like, spine questions of the show, is, these questions of friendship and what does it mean to be a friend. And, as I've told this story countless times on the show, but it's like, so much of the spirit of the show has come down to questioning whether or not I've been a good friend. and
Mm,
and and through my recent years journey of this diagnosis, I've recognized, like, what a part my neurodivergent brain has played in that, and
yeah.
and how much a neurodivergent brain struggles to make and maintain friends, and how it's like always being the weird kid who would have a friend for a year and then having a meltdown or having some kind of, autistic screeching, and then suddenly, like, and then suddenly I don't have those friends again,
Yeah.
and taking the blame on for myself, right? And I guess to you, what does it mean to be a friend, especially with everything you're learning about yourself?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. Honestly, like I'm kind of in the same vein as what you just said. Like it's like out of sight, out of mind. Like
Hmm.
if you're not in front of me, you don't exist, right? And that's totally an ADHD thing, but I'm so good at like situational friendships or like showmances, but with friends,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
people I work with, or you're on a project together, and I just like get super close with these people, and then it's like, oh, I'm gonna be so sad when this is over, and then yeah, I'm not. Like 2 days later, it's like it never happened, right? And yeah, I really struggle maintaining friendships, and like there's that sort of cliche where it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in 2 years, but we sit down and it's like it's been yesterday. And but like,
Another
what is it?
ADHD trait.
Yeah, yeah. But like, what does it mean to like be there for someone? What does it
Yes.
mean to like my brother has a really close group of friends. They're like they're ride or die kind of thing. And he has a Christmas party every year, and he always invites me and Steven. And he's like 7 years younger than me, so the crowd is a little like he's pushing 40 now, but like it's sometimes I'm like, I can't party with 20-year-olds anymore, but we
Yeah.
always go and whatever. And by the time I've had 2 or 3 drinks, I'm always just like, his tribe is just so there for him.
Yeah.
And I always like tear up and like I have to like leave because I'm gonna ruin the party. But
Yeah.
I just seeing him with his friends, and they all like they're like introduce themselves. I'm like, oh, I'm Levi's sister, and they're like, oh, your brother's so awesome, like, and I'm just like, I don't have that. I
Yeah.
never have. And I'm like, I'm just so happy for him that he does, and he is such an amazing guy, and all these people are just like there for him, and he's there for them. And but I'm just like, I don't even know, I can't even imagine what that's like.
Yeah.
Like if I won a contest that was like bring 8 friends, I would be like, I don't, who am I gonna invite?
Yeah. I guess I'll bring my dad,
Yeah, exactly. But yet there's so many people that I look back in my life, and I'm just so grateful that they played such a huge role in my life at the time. And just because that I've drifted away doesn't mean it's less meaningful to me, or that they made less of an impact on me.
Mhm.
And like I don't know how to like reciprocate that. I have no
Yes.
idea if those relationships were as meaningful to them as they were to me.
Yes.
I have no idea if I have just walked through life just taking from all these people, and did they get anything in return, you know?
I
So
you're vo
I
you're voicing my inner monologue. Yes, yes.
so I mean, I like to think I know like the dictionary definition of a friend. I hope I've been that to someone,
Mhm.
but I really like I don't think I'm anybody's ride or die except maybe like Steven. And
I
I
love
don't
I love maybe Steven.
like maybe I don't know, maybe if he was in crisis he wouldn't come to me because he'd be
Yeah.
like gestures vaguely like maybe he'd go to someone who has their shit together a little better. I don't know. But like, yeah, so I don't know. Like
Yeah.
there have been so, and I traveled for quite a few years after university, and so like literally all over the world there's dozens of people that I like think about a lot,
Mhm.
who like helped me and who meant a lot to me, but I haven't spoken to them in a decade kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that's you're like I say, that's my inner monologue, is this question of like it's what that spirit of that question is like, have I been a friend? Like, like, what even, like, the fuck does that even mean? You know, like,
Mhm.
and I'm so you're oh my god, you're just vocalizing so many of my inner turmoils of like I I think so fondly about all the people who have been in my life and all the things they've done for me and all the things that I've tried to do for them and all the ways I hold them so tenderly in my heart. And then I also am like, when it's not there, did it matter? Did it mean anything? And I'm trying really hard to say, like, I'm trying really hard. It's another therapy tactic. Is what Scott, my guy, he gets me to do is you look at a situation for only what it is and not
Mhm.
for, not compared to anything else, not weighted against another experience, not, this is better than that, this is worse than that. Just you just let it be it, and there's no meaning other than what you ascribe to it. So why not give it no meaning, because there is no meaning to anything. It's just
Mhm.
you just were alive, um and again, it brings out this like joy and excitement, but it also brings out such a deep sadness because I agree. And this is something I've been really struggling with this show recently, is interviewing people who have these really deep, intimate groups who go back years, and they always recommend, like, yeah, just, just put the time in. And it's like, Bubba, I am 36. When I when I put in 10 years of work, I'm gonna be almost 50. And so, like, cool, okay, And there's a cynicism to that, and there's a pressure to that, but it's also like, well, should I be so lucky to be alive at almost 50? Like, and that would be great to have a group of friends at almost 50. So why would I be resistant to it?
Mhm.
It's these cyclical spins. Yeah, I'm really vocalizing my inner shame spiral here. You just always find the, like, what's the roadblock? What's the roadblock?
Yeah.
But feels like a pinball machine.
Yeah.
But
But I mean, sorry to go like
no.
back to ADHD, but
Yeah, yeah.
being unable to imagine yourself having a future is an ADHD thing. So, like, being able to say, if I put in the work now, when I'm 50, I'll have a group of friends, forget about it.
Means nothing.
Yeah. It's like, unless it's going to give me some kind of validation or excitement or something right now, it's like, yeah,
Why would I
can't
do
do
it?
it. Yeah.
Well, and that's something I've been really struggling with, is in moving to a new city and in trying to make new friends. You know, I've been really desperate. I've been admittedly very, very frantic at times to be like, let's get intimate now,
Mm,
like, let's be 10-year friends in 10 seconds, so that I have someone, because I'm so fucking alone and I'm so
yeah.
fucking lonely, and that's just not how you make friends,
No, not usually, no.
unless you find another freak,
Yeah. Or in
um
artificial situations, like when I was teaching in Korea
mhm.
and I had like 10 other expats that I worked with, it was
Yes.
like, okay, these are your friends now. And it
Yep.
was that sort of situation.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, normal life doesn't really work that way.
Hmm. This is a new question I've been incorporating off and on throughout the new interviews. That I kind of dovetail from this question of how, especially at our ages, like, how do you make friends? How do you do it?
I don't know. My tactics have seemed to be like oversharing, um, like hyper focusing on people,
Hmm.
which comes across as like aggressive
Mm.
and
Needy.
often mistaken for like sexual advances,
Yes.
which
Yes.
it never is. Mostly never. Like I don't know how many times I've had to have a talk with particularly a guy friend where they're like, I just am not in. I'm like, oh gosh, no. I just really think you're cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
and then when they like hear that enough times that they believe it, they usually are like, okay, yeah, we can be this weird friend. But anyway, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that find so much frustration in. And that's been such an element of my exploration of friendship in general, is like, you know, it seems like society conditions us to only have intimacy with people we're fucking, you know?
Mm.
And it's like, no wonder we're also fucking lonely, you know, because you impose like this institutional monogamy on everyone, and then you don't let anyone else in. You make this one partner your everything, and then you wonder why you're untapped, and you wonder why you're lonely and frantic, and you know, one person
Mhm.
can't hold, like, I can't hold all myself. I can't expect one other person to hold all of me. Like, I need multiple
Yeah.
intimate connections. And, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, if we do, you know, no pants stuff, that's awesome. But that's not really the requirement of intimacy, you know,
Yeah.
and I think that's fucking exhausting.
Yeah. Totally. I'm curious because I know like you've been very public with this like sort of like inner self journey that you've been on
Yeah.
for the last like couple years. And I have also been like getting lots of therapy and so I'm curious if like I don't really believe in like epiphanies or like
Mm.
breakthroughs where you're just like, oh, suddenly I'm better. Um, but I'm curious if you've had any moments that felt like that, where something just like suddenly the puzzle pieces fit together, like apart from like a diagnosis or like if anything ever came up
Yeah.
that sort of changed the radio station in your head or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny, actually. It's so funny you used the analogy puzzle piece, because that was one of them in a therapy session where I was talking about, you know, it's like I'm building this puzzle, and I've got all the pieces kind of almost around, and Scott was like, "Well, I think the first thing to remember is that there's nothing to solve, so it's not a puzzle." You
Mm.
know? Like, he's like, there's nothing to solve here. You're just living, you know? And so sort of like scrap the puzzle off the coffee table, you know? Um, in my experience, a lot of times what it's been has been like laying all these foundations that I'm not really sure what each thing is. I believe it as an individual thought, but I'm not quite sure how it fits in my body yet. And
Mm.
then I lay these groundwork of a few of them, and then something happens where they sort of all come into play. And then suddenly it's like, oh, that's why you do that, you know? Things like framing, things like saying I want to versus I need to, things like recognizing, you know, the sort of the analogy of like putting your air mask on first before saving other people, you know, um these little things that all make sense individually, and then suddenly they all play together in a situation, and you go, oh shit, I've got all these tools at hand, and like
Mm.
it's working. You know, and um you know, so elements of like, yeah, taking care of yourself first is like healthy ego, you know? It's not selfish. It's good to be okay first, you know? And it's not like, I think it's been kind of bastardized with like, how you gonna love somebody else if you don't love yourself? Like, I don't think that's like, that's not real. That's just like, that's garbage words, you know? But the sentiment behind it holds truth, you know?
Mhm.
It's like, how are you going to take care of anyone else if you can't take care of yourself, you know? Even then, that's not even the full truth, because like, yeah, sometimes you need help. You know? um so I think it's like, yeah, I have had those epiphany moments. Often those come in moments of stress, and often those comes in moments of trauma, which then like years ago, if it was the same situation, would have dug in and gotten worse. But because of the groundwork I've been laying, I'm able to like shift and have a new experience, because I'm changing how I react to stuff. Um, but but I think maybe one of the biggest epiphanies I have had has been that, like, you can't just change, you know? You like, you can change, but it's not just like you think it and it's done. It's, oh, I'm gonna have to think this every time for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not gonna want to. and
Mhm.
sometimes I'm gonna forget, and sometimes I'm gonna think it and still not do it, and there's gonna be any number of things, right? So it's I think that has been such a core element of it, is just like recognizing that there's nothing to fix. It's just like being aware of it and then deciding in the next contextual moments whether or not you're going to do that or not,
Yeah.
and again, it comes back to that thing of like it's really fun but it's so scary. you know
Mhm.
yeah. um how about yourself? Have you had anything like that in your sort of first, I feel like you were kind of describing it a bit in through your diagnosis,
Mhm.
but
Well, I remember um in a therapy session one time talking about like my crippling perfectionism. And she asked me like, where do you think that comes from? Like can we get to the bottom of that? I was like, well, my mom and dad are both perfectionists, but like it manifests in different ways. Like my mom has to be like on top of everything all the time, and my dad, like me, just like if he doesn't believe he can do it perfectly, he's not going to do it at all.
yeah.
And she's like, okay, fair. Like you could have learned that from them or genetics, who knows? But that's
Mhm.
kind of a bullshit cop out answer. It's
Big
like,
time.
like where do you think this really comes from? And it wasn't just like one conversation, but I remember a particular one where we were talking about again the death of my sister and how I like vowed that I would like live a life that um like honored her, and which is like such an incredible pressure to put on yourself.
Yes.
So how can anything ever be good enough if you're
Yeah.
trying to live up to like someone who is, and the thing too about like grief and like looking back on someone's life is of course they're going to always seem better than they actually were, right?
Yeah.
So, and she was so young when she died too, so it was extra like she hadn't had time to not live up to her potential yet. So she was nothing but potential. So putting that pressure on myself, like, yeah, of course, I'm never going to be able to live up to that. And I
Mhm.
like, it was like a marble dropping into like a bowl of water. It was just like, holy crap. And I just like bawled in my
Yeah,
session.
of course.
And then I actually went to a show at Persephone that night.
Oh, wow.
And then um that night went home, whatever, woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m. and I just puked my guts out
Yeah.
for seemingly no reason, like unless it was the meatballs at opening night at Persephone, which I haven't
Almost certainly.
entirely ruled out.
Yep,
But
yep.
um and then yeah, I woke up the next day and I was like, okay, that was weird. But it was like I'd been carrying this thing, and then like physically my body rejected it. and
Mhm.
and like I said, I and fixing yourself, quote unquote, it's a daily, like you put in the work, you make the choices.
Mhm.
It's not just like, oh, an epiphany, today's the day and tomorrow I'm a new person kind of thing. But that figuring out, like, yeah, like you can never live up to that. And
Yeah.
also, like, if there is an afterlife and if she's looking down on you, do you think she's looking at you thinking like, wow, way to waste your life,
Yeah.
Shanda. Like you call this an
Exactly.
honor to me? Like, no. I'm sure she's looking down and she's proud of me, like
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah. You know,
So,
and there's something too to be said about like something I've learned is that in moving that energy through your body, it's not that it takes the experience it away, but it takes the the energy of that experience and it either removes it or it changes it. So having these big cathartic cries, having these expulsions, they are needed. They are needed to move through the feeling. And
mhm.
yeah, like you can never take time away. You can never forget something. You can never change what happened. but you can change how it feels within your body. And that does sometimes happen very rapidly and very suddenly. Sometimes,
Mhm.
I know I've had moments where something's sprung up in me about a trauma or another, and I've had these like massive wails about them, and you know that feeling has never come back since. I'll still think about it. It'll still come up. It sometimes some of them still do hurt, but they don't hurt the same way.
Mhm.
The feeling is changed in my body, and it's because my body let that energy move through it,
Mhm.
and then go away. you know.
Mhm. That's really interesting too, because I don't know, timelines are weird. I think it was about 6 years ago. I got like diagnosed with depression. I started
Mm.
medication, but I also started getting massages every month.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there's this one knot in the back of my shoulder blade, and it's almost gone now. But that massage therapist would dig her elbow into that knot, and it was like she was opening the portal to hell. And it wasn't pain, it was painful, but it wasn't just pain. It was like,
Catharsis.
yeah, all of the demons that I had stored in my soul were behind that knot.
Yeah.
And, I would just be, like, silently weeping on the massage table, not
Yes.
because of the pain, but just something about it was just stored in that spot.
Yeah.
And, like, I sit at a desk all day, I still have tight shoulders, but that, like, it was like a trauma knot.
Yep. Big
Yeah,
time.
it's yeah, incredible.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Um, leading back from the friendship question, this is a new question I've incorporated this season, is this idea of like, if friendship is boiled down to like the one-on-one, then I guess you can expand that into like, community is multiple versions of that one-on-one. And it's another one of those words that means so much and means nothing, and it gets thrown around, but it often feels like it's being misused, or it's not being used right, or whatever it might be. And to me, I continue to really struggle with the question of community. And I'm looking for my community, and I feel like I'm getting into stuff, rejoining the queer community, and rediscovering myself within that after putting it away for so long and so traumatically, and so like, there's elements of finding community that I'm exploring, but I'm still not quite sure I trust the word. And
Mm.
I'm really curious, to you, what does the initial question is like, what does community mean to you?
Again, I kind of like, I know what I want it to mean. Um, I know, like, the sort of dictionary definition of what I think it means, but um like the closest thing I could ever think in my life that I've had to being part of one is when I was really involved with tonight's poetry and
Mhm.
the spoken word poetry slam community, I guess. I don't know, I guess it's like on the surface it's like a group of people with like a combined goal or like shared values or something.
Mm.
um I don't think it necessarily has to be like physically or geographically
Mhm.
close.
Mhm.
Like you can have online communities
Of
or
course.
whatever. But yeah, I feel people who support each other and like yeah, have some kind of shared something that they share, I guess. Yeah.
Mm. Mhm. And how do you find, this is a sentence I hear all the time of like showing up in community,
Mhm.
you show up in community. And I'm wondering, what does it mean to you to show up?
Oh gosh, I feel like I haven't shown up for anybody in a really long time, including
I
myself.
I think that's why I'm asking it, because I'm like, how do you do that? What is that? I don't
Yeah.
think I am.
Well, I mean, there's like the literal actual like showing up, like if you're a friend is like in a show or like doing a poetry reading or their band is playing, like to literally go there and do the things and literally
Sure.
show up for them. But like beyond that, I don't know. Like it's kind of hand in hand with like holding space, I think too. It
Mm.
just like it's almost like taking up the room around someone almost like building a shield so that they have the room to like process the thing, whatever it is.
Mm.
So you don't have to worry about like, what am I going to eat today? It's like, I got you. I'll bring you some food. You just worry about whatever it is. I don't
Mhm.
know.
It sounds to me like, it's like the concept of safe spaces, right? Like a safe space isn't for everyone. A safe space is for the people who need to be safe, and
Mhm.
I think so much of the pushback from concepts like safe spaces come from people who like aren't safe for that space. And so
Mhm.
they're trying to like and it's like, no, 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 this is like a safe space isn't inclusive. That's the point,
Mhm.
It's exclusive. And that's how we make it safe, is that we don't just let anyone in. It's just
Mhm.
for who needs it, right? And um yeah, and that but that's hard too because it's like how do you choose who gets in? How do you choose who gets, can you expel people, like
Yeah.
when someone's in the space and then they're suddenly not safe, what do you do? There's so many like people are just fuck.
Yeah. I did
um
I
oh,
did I
so
didn't miss peopling during the pandemic. That was one thing.
fuck. What a That's the thing. Oh my god, that whole couple years, it was like so awful and so traumatic, and there was so much pain that came out of it. And then there were silver lining moments of like, yeah, and I didn't have to do so many things I
Mhm.
hated doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just have the one other question, but before we do, I really do. I want to take a second and just say like thank you so much first of all for coming on the show and chatting with me and I've been thinking a lot about you and Stephen both not only in the run up to this interview but like over the last couple months and I was thinking about how much you meant to me when I was in town, and then how much it meant to me. I realized we lost contact when I left, but like you were one of the only people in Saskatoon who like reached out to me and checked in on me. You know what I mean? And I haven't forgotten that. And I know, like we've talked about, I am a out of sight, out of mind person, I'm working on not hating that about myself, but it is just a fact of my brain that I struggle with object permanence. And but every time you enter my mind, I'm just flooded with another wave of just like love and admiration and just adoration. And I just want to thank you for being a part of my life and I'm hopeful someday we'll see each other in person again, but like if that doesn't happen, like we'll still stay connected online if that's
Yeah.
good, if that's all we can, right? So
Yeah.
I love you, Shanda, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I feel the same way. Like, whenever I think about, oh, when we would hang out in person when you lived here, I always just left feeling so like challenged, but like in a good way. And just like you always had so much passion for everything. And I always was just like, it was so contagious. And you always made me want to like write a play or build a cathedral or who knows, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean I see you on social media. I don't really post very much, but I definitely check in on you on there, and you're in my mind a lot too. Like, I wish we could just like sit down and have a beer.
I know
Yeah.
it's rough. It's rough out here in Canada, years ago a friend of mine once described that like sort of that pain of missing friends as like wishing that they could just like take all the people they loved and just like put them in her pocket, and just you could just be my pocket people and we could just go wherever we need to, and I just
Yeah.
you're definitely a pocket person for me. you know
Well, thanks.
um um the last question of the show, I always love to end off on a little bit of like an actionable kind of tip for the listeners, and I'm wondering if you have one thing that listeners could try doing this week to be a better friend, whether it's to themselves or to their community.
I mean, at the risk of sounding vague, I guess like showing up. Figuring out like whatever that means, like go to your friend's gig or like um like if there's a rally in support of some some marginalized people or something that you care about, go. Or um reach out to someone who you know has been having a rough time, or even if they're not, just say, "Hey, we haven't talked in a while. I was thinking about you. Like, I love you," kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's like, yeah, I guess figuring out what showing up could mean in a
Yeah.
big or small way.
Yeah. I love that. I love the idea of like, because it's like, yeah, I ask, my guests that question, but it's like I think everybody should be asking it for themselves, kind of all the time because it can also
Mhm.
change, a recent guest, talked about how like your capacity and your like good enough changes every day. It's
Mhm.
not a consistent every day this is the bar. It's like, okay, where's the bar today?
Mhm.
And then accepting that and realizing that it's a roller coaster. It's not a upward mountain, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I really love that. So yeah, so listeners, go do that. That's there's a challenge. Well, Shanda, you're the fucking best. Thank you so much. You're wonderful. Is there anywhere that you'd like listeners to find you? Do you want them to find you? Do you want to say mysterious? What's your preference?
I mean, um you could. There's not much to like look at. I'm mostly like Instagram is the one I use most, and it's just Auntie Shanda on Instagram. But I don't do much on the interwebs these days. So lots of cat photos. If you like cute cats, that's mostly what's on my socials. So
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, those links will be in the show notes. And yeah, Shanda, one more time, thank you so much. I love you so goddamn much, and I hope you have just the best fucking day.
well, thank you. Same to you.
And that's it. Thank you once more to Shanda for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure catching up with her, and I really hope I get to do that again soon. If you like the show, please be sure to give it a review anywhere you can. Every review helps. Give it a 5-star. It's free for you and it helps me out. If you want more Friendless content, do not forget to sign up for the weekly Substack. Every Wednesday, you're going to get a brand new update straight to your inbox or on the Substack app, whichever you prefer. It's going to have brand new writing from me, along with a curated playlist for the month and recommendations of things that I've been enjoying that week. Anything from books, music, movies, podcasts, distractions, toys, all kinds of fun stuff. It's a ton of fun to write, and I've been getting great feedback from readers, so be sure to sign up if you haven't yet. It is always free, and it is in the links in the show notes. But that's it for me, so I'm just going to wrap this up here. Be sure to follow Friendless on all the social medias at FriendlessPod, and follow along to at Hey Sorry I Missed You on Instagram for my daily novel that I've been writing this year. I will be back with a brand new episode next week, and I really hope to catch you there. But I'm not going to worry about that right now, and neither should you, because that is then, and this is now. So for now, I'll just say I love you, and I wish you well. Fun and safety, sweeties.